Hi, it's Dr. JP with Leo here, and Leo, today I'm going to read Miss Smith's incredible storybook. Well, what's that about? Well, it's about a special kind of storybook, and I don't want to tell you anymore. I want you just to take a little seat here, and we will be going through Mrs. Smith's incredible storybook by Michael Garland. Okay, there's Miss Smith. Miss Smith is kind of like a punk rocker kind of teacher. So here we go. It's the first day of school. Zach was waiting for his teacher to arrive. Boring, 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 he thought. Why would this year be any different than last year? And then the door swung open. Good morning, class. My name is Miss Smith, and I'm your new teacher. What? Yeah. Now, Miss Smith, she seemed very different than Zach's other teachers. But the day went like every other school day. Until Miss Smith said, "It's story time." And she sat at her desk and started to read from the books that she had brought with her. And Zach could not believe his eyes, because when she read, the storybook characters came to life, and the classroom, all of a sudden, it was a swashbuckling pirate's tale right there live in the classroom. Whoa! And Zach and the rest of the class were right in the middle of the story. And they could feel the breeze in their hair and hear the waves pounding on the side of the ship. They could feel everything. The boat was rocking. The pirates were right there talking in front of them. They were there on the ship. And from then on, Zach couldn't wait to go to school. Every day there was a new story to look forward to. And when Miss Smith finished reading, all the characters and in the adventure, they whooshed back right into the book. So, on Friday, Principal Riddenrotten, well, he stood in front of the class instead of Miss Smith. Excuse me, class, but Miss Smith is stuck in traffic, so she asked me to read to you until she arrives, okay? Zach wondered what would happen next, because Principal Riddenrotten, he started to read, and Zach grinned when all of a sudden a princess leaped out of the book, followed by a fire-breathing dragon and a brave knight on his horse. What is this? What's going on here? And Principal Riddenrotten, he was so surprised by this that all he could do was scream, "Ah!" And he threw the book up in the air in fright. "I'm going for help! The class is in trouble!" And he ran out the door because there was a fire-breathing dragon and a knight in the class. But we all knew what was going on. And before Zach could do anything, Sue-Ann pounced on the storybook. But she didn't finish the dragon story. She started reading another one instead. The princess, the dragon, and the knight, they didn't go back in the book because she didn't finish it. But then Goldilocks and the Three Bears came out. What is going on here? And then Freddie, the class clown, jumped out of his seat and he tried to yank the book away from Sue-Ann. But when Sue-Ann let go, she tumbled backwards and the book flew across the room and the whole class laughed. And then Billy caught the book and he started to read a new story, and Zach shook his head in amazement because the Mad Hatter and the Cheshire Cat and Alice from Wonderland, they all came out of the story and joined the others. And then pretty soon the book passed from kid to kid, and one character flew out of the pages, and the classroom was starting to get very crowded. "This is trouble," Zach said. The chaos was beginning to spill into the halls. "Why don't you finish the story?" Zack pleaded, but no one was listening. Now we had the Headless Horseman, we had the Wizard of Oz characters, the Three Little Pigs, Humpty Dumpty. All kinds of stories were coming to life. And then Mrs. Smith, well, she brought her car to a screeching stop in front of the school. And all of a sudden, she goes, "Ooh, there seems to be a little problem," she said as she raced inside, because the Headless Horseman was just running by her with a pumpkin head. And Little Bo Peep was there. And then she saw Jack and the Beanstalk was growing on the side of the building, and Humpty Dumpty was about to jump off the building, and the pirates had taken over the top, and the Three Little Pigs were looking out the window with the Wizard of Oz, and the fire-breathing dragon was still fighting the night. And meanwhile, Zack was inside shouting, "We have to finish the story so the characters will go back in the book." But the storybook characters, they didn't want to go back, and they started to have a tug of war. "We don't want to go back in there. Give us the book. Give us the book." And they all started tug-of-warring with the kids until finally Miss Smith appeared in the doorway. And with one look, she let everybody know that she meant business. Even the dragon was suddenly silent. Zack handed the book back to Miss Smith, and she ruffled through the pages, adjusted her glasses, and started to read. And the class sat spellbound as she finished each story in turn, and with a whoosh and a swoosh, and one character after another disappeared back into the book. And they kept disappearing and disappearing until all of the stories were finished and the classroom was tidy and quiet again. Principal Rittenrotten and a team of firefighters skittled to a halt at the door just as Miss Smith closed the book. Can I help you, Principal Rittenrotten? Wait a sec. He couldn't really answer. Just stared at the class with his mouth open. Miss Smith smashed a secret smile to her class, and Zack smiled right back at her because he knew what was going on. Who would have ever guessed that reading could be so much fun? Well, it was time for story time, and the class gathered around. But someone had forgotten to go back into their storybook. And this is one of several Miss Smith stories, so if you liked it, come back and see what happens with the incredible storybook again.